where the opposites unite. We see universally recognized beauty, right? Where day and night meet, you get the sunset and the sunrise. And those are pretty universally beautiful. Who doesn't like the sunset? Who doesn't like the sunrise? The ancient mode of thinking and operating in the world. They had this intuitive and conscious understanding of the archetypal patterns of reality that make up the metaphysical ocean that we live in. And they had something of a secret language, for lack of a better word, to describe these things. A hidden language, a language hidden only to the mind of the modern materialist. And they describe these patterns using symbols like sacred mountains, giants, hybrid monsters like the Sphinx, the Griffin, the Cherubim. Symbols, they also used symbols like garments of skin, yin and yang, logos, logoi, etc. They saw the same archetypes and agencies that Jung picked up on, and they called them many different things. They called them spirits, demons, divine forms, logoi, archetypes. When we're talking about Saint Maximus the Confessor, for example, he used archetypes in a different way than Jung, but gods, angels, demons, Elohim, Beni Elohim, Ruah, Jinn, so on and so forth, Pneuma. And of course, all of these different spirits in the Bible, the spirit of truth, the spirit of hope, the spirit of faith, the spirit of love, etc. Spirit of wisdom, Sophia. And then typically at the top of the hierarchy, or at very least near it, you have something like the creator God, the creator father God of divine order. And of course, the logos and the spirit on the Christian side of things. So anyways, when we're talking about these things, I think one thing that's really important to throw out there is the fact that yes, Jung is an amazing source, and Jordan Peterson is an amazing source for these sorts of things. But the Pageau brothers are easily two of the best sources on the subject. So you have Mathieu Pageau, I believe that's how you say his name. He wrote The Language of Creation, which is a very, very good book. It's a bit of a slog to read at certain points, but it's good. And Jonathan Pageau is the brother that you see hanging out with Jordan Peterson, and on his podcast, he does a lot of podcasts, a lot of videos, and he is very, very helpful. They've developed their own language almost, or they haven't really developed it. They've borrowed the language of our ancestors, essentially, and the early church fathers that happen to be incredibly helpful for understanding the metaphysical world around us, for understanding the archetypal patterns that we kind of desperately need to be able to understand to survive the current situation that our world is in and is facing. Okay, so keep in mind here, I'm going to be using this word pattern very broadly to point to regularities in the world, both in nature and scriptures and in abstract ideas as well. But the most important types of patterns that I'm trying to study and help people understand and help myself understand, what I'm trying to point to are the abstract metaphysical patterns in reality, like hierarchy, for example, the opposites, the yin and yang, order and chaos, masculine and feminine, and the union of opposites. We're going to talk more about that very soon, how the union of opposites reveals beauty and objective beauty at that, which is an objective truth, which is very important in philosophy. So yeah, the union of opposites, emanation, the cycles of recurrence, like the idea of death and rebirth, for example, and so many others. In modern times, we've lost our connection to, our discernment of, and our understanding of the archetypal patterns that we can clearly see, not just in myths and in the Bible and the ancient scriptures, but in our day-to-day life as well, in our individual psyches, the collective unconscious, in society, in nature, and beyond. We use Jungian language in part to recapture this pre-modern mode of thinking, to recapture the enchanted vision of the world and reality that we've lost in modern times, alongside the death of God. Jung, what he says on the subject is that God never died at all, but was repressed into the collective unconscious, alongside all the things that came with that mode of thinking, right? The spirit, the archetypal, the gods, the goddesses, the demons, the angels. To this day, even the most religious Christians out there think like materialists, like physicalists. So, for example, this applies to you, especially if you're a Christian. When you get a migraine or a stomach ache, what do you tend to do? You probably take a Tylenol or a Tums. But what you probably don't do is ask for prayer, get anointed with oil, ask your priest or healer or community to lay their hands on you and pray for healing. You might throw up a Hail Mary prayer, not in the Catholic sense, but in like a, football Hail Mary sense. But it's very, very rare to trust in the efficacy of prayer these days. And look, I'm not making a case against Tylenol or Tums by any stretch of the imagination. Medicine works, science works, technology works, and it can be great. But this is just one of countless ways that we understand reality differently from the ancients, from our ancestors, and we embody different patterns as a result. While technology and science and medicine have helped us in massive ways, they've also created a huge barrier between us and the spirit, between us and the archetypal. And that's actually a major problem, because when we treat the world as if it's just matter, we fail to see that it's an enchanted world of what matters and what matters the most. Those invisible things, those are the things that matter most. When we think like a materialist, like a physicalist, we reduce reality down to a tiny, tiny fraction of what it really is. And we lose wisdom. We lose memory, and we lose morality. We lose our moral compass. Because science and the world of matter just can't show us, it's not possible for it to show us how to be wise, how to make moral decisions, how to operate in the world in the right way, in the correct way, morally speaking. And in a world filled with AI and enough hyper advanced firecrackers to send all of humanity to an early grave, lacking wisdom and strong moral compass is a very, very bad thing. So what I'll delve into here are a bunch of patterns, starting with the most obvious patterns in nature, which we've lost connection to a degree at least, but many of us haven't completely. And as an angler, I can show you some of those patterns, keeping in mind that the metaphysical patterns are just as real and even more important, but they are harder to see. One of the most important things to keep in mind here, though, is that what I'm giving you is something like a recipe, something like it's book knowledge, basically. When my father taught me how to fish, it was kind of like an apprenticeship. I observed and mimicked his movements, his behavior. I embodied the patterns that I saw. And I supplemented that with fishing books that taught me the types of baits to use and lures and on what types of fish and when, where, how. But without taking that knowledge and putting it into action, without embodying that action of fishing, of casting a certain way, of retrieving the lure a certain way, reading the different patterns on the water and in nature and in the wind and all of that, and applying those things in the act of fishing, the knowledge would have been useless. And the same very much goes for these videos. They're supplemental in nature, and they're useless without action, without embodying the metaphysical patterns of reality. That's why someone like Jordan Peterson, he'll tell you the same thing. And Jonathan Pageau, he'll tell you roughly the same thing as well. Only he'll say something more like, go to church. He'll say it over and over and over again. Go to church, go to church, go to church. Why? Because when you go to church, you're embodying the logos, you're embodying the highest patterns through liturgy, through the service, through mass. And I think there's a real beauty in that. There's a real truth there. So let's say you recognize the pattern of the opposites, and you notice that where the opposites unite, we see universally recognized beauty. And we do, right? Where day and night meet, you get the sunset and the sunrise. And those are pretty universally beautiful, from my understanding. Who doesn't like the sunset? Who doesn't like the sunrise? When male and female unite, we get not only the beauty of intimacy, but the beauty of a child, of a baby, which are universally beautiful, right? We call them cute, adorable, etc. And where your hopelessness meets the fruit of hope no longer deferred. So say, for example, you get some unexpected money so you can pay off all those bills that have been stressing you out. What happens? The peace and relief and happiness that you feel, most would consider those beautiful things because they are. Objective beauty is real, and that's an objective truth. So the reason we use juxtaposition in art, in literature, in poetry, etc., is because it is the joining of opposites, and done properly, this creates beauty, or it reveals beauty, you could say. And this is exactly why Jordan Peterson was moved to tears in his conversation with Jonathan Pageau about God, about Christ in particular. He was talking about when the objective world and the narrative world touch. It's a beautiful and sometimes terrifying intersection or joining. So let's say you recognize that pattern, but never use the truth that it reveals. That is the truth of objective beauty. You never use it to dig into other forms of objective truth, objective morality, and you don't use it to seek out those forms of beauty more. Understanding that experiencing the proper joining of the opposites is one of the most vital things you can do, both for yourself and your family, your community, and the world as a whole. If you don't use this information to conceptualize the highest form of joining the opposites, which is something like joining heaven and earth, your psyche and the logos, and strive to do that consistently in your life, it's useless, right? Knowledge without application, what is it? The scripture says, knowledge puffs up, love builds up. But knowledge applied in love, through love, it's a whole nother story. That's wisdom. Okay, so that's all I have for you for this video. I think this next video is going to be a joining of this video and the last video I did. It's going to be a long one, but it's going to be a lot of good stuff in there. So that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.